guys, Dustin here. Welcome to another episode of Horroritis. Now, this episode is going to be the first of a series that I plan on doing throughout the year called 12 Months of Foreign Horror. Or if you wanted to shorten it down, we could call it 12 Mo-Fo-Ho. That's terrible. I'm going to hashtag it on Twitter. So basically what I'm doing in this series is I'm taking either a country or a region of the world and examining the movies from that area that I think are definitely worth seeing if you haven't. Now, some places are going to have a lot of movies and some places are going to have significantly less movies. So for the first episode of 12 Months of Foreign Horror, or 12 Mo-Fo-Ho, still not working? I didn't think so. We'll be covering the United Kingdom. Now, the United Kingdom consists of England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. Now, I was able to find some for pretty much every region of the UK except for Wales. Sorry, Wales. Now, these movies aren't in any specific order. They're not ranked from best to worst or whatever. In fact, the only criteria to get on the list is if I think it's a good movie. These are the movies that if we were hanging out and you hadn't seen them, I would sit down and watch them with you, even if I've seen them 100 times, which in some of the cases I have. So the first on the list is Dog Soldiers from 2002, and this one comes out of Scotland. A squad of British soldiers is dropped into the Scottish Highlands for a routine training mission. When they come across the ravaged remains of a special forces team, the soldiers are attacked by monstrous enemies and take shelter in an old house where they must make their stand and try to survive until morning. What I liked about this movie is it was the first really entertaining werewolf movie probably since American Werewolf in London. Now, I know that I could probably be crucified for saying that because there have been quite a few werewolf movies between the two, but Werewolf in London had something special about it, and I hadn't really seen kind of the comedy mixed with the gore and just the excitement and the enjoyment of the movie. I hadn't seen that duplicated in any of the other ones until we got up to Dog Soldiers, so that's why Dog Soldiers makes the list, because it's fun to watch, it's gory, and it's got a few moments where you can't help but laugh. Next one on the list is Severance from 2006. A group of sales representatives go on a team-building retreat in the mountains of Eastern Europe, but their trip turns into a nightmare when they are hunted down and killed one by one. Now, this movie, like Dog Soldiers, is fun to watch. It's gory as hell, and it's kind of funny. It starts off like a regular slasher flick, and, you know, they're doing a team-building exercise, and one by one they start dying in interesting slasher movie ways, except at the end there's a slight twist, and it's actually very worth the watch. Next one up is from England, and that's The Cottage from 2008. After a botched kidnapping, two brothers take refuge in a small countryside town. As one mistake leads to another, the brothers are forced to deal with an unruly victim, her mob boss father, two hitmen, and a deranged psychopath. One of the things about this movie that I thought was great was that it starts out as a kidnapping movie, and for a long time the victim is tied to a chair and gagged, so she's not talking. And the whole time you've got this preconceived notion about this girl that they've tied up, and then when they finally do untie her, she just lets loose with this profanity-laden tirade on these guys in like the thickest Irish accent you've ever heard. And you're just not expecting that to happen, and it really catches you by surprise and makes you laugh. Probably, aside from the twist, it's the best part of the movie, and it was very enjoyable. Next one, we're going back to 1987 for Hellraiser. When a girl finds and solves a puzzle box, she learns the terrible truth about her missing uncle and must flee from the demons that he betrayed. Now, if you know anything about horror, you've probably heard of Hellraiser, or Clive Barker, who's responsible for Hellraiser, or you've most definitely heard of Pinhead, at least, who is the the main bad guy for Hellraiser. And this movie, unlike the rest of them, it's not funny. It's just straight up horror and gore and a bit of BDSM, I guess. If you haven't seen this one, though, you really have to, because this is one of those horror movie staples. It's a classic that everybody's seen, and you kind of have to see it yourself to understand it, and you'll most likely enjoy it. Next one comes from Ireland, and that's 2004's Dead Meat. When two tourists are traveling through Ireland, they stumble upon a zombie outbreak that affects more than just humans. Now this movie goes back to being funny. Have you ever noticed in zombie movies how the zombie apocalypse only affects people and somehow the animals are left, well, unchanged? In this movie they take care of that, and it's really well summed up in a scene where people are trapped in a car on the road in the middle of the night, and basically the car is being attacked by zombie cows, and I think there's sheep and stuff like that mixed in there. It's really, really fun. The next one on our list is 28 Days Later from 2002. When Jim wakes up from a coma, he learns that London has been wiped out by zombies. Together with a small group of survivors, he makes his way to a military outpost that offers protection, but protection comes at a price. This is probably one of the most popular zombie movies in the past 15 years, I guess. It's pretty much everything you would expect from a zombie movie. It's blood and guts and people eating people, and it's got your running zombies to make things a little crazier. It's basically a group of people trying to survive in London, and then they try to make their way from London to a military outpost, and once they get there they find out that the people who are supposed to be protecting them aren't really that concerned with their safety. If you haven't seen this, once again, definitely worth a watch. The next one on the list is from 2004, and that's Shaun of the Dead. Now, this one is straight up comedy, but it's a zombie comedy, so zombie. When Shaun decides to get his life in order, get his ex-girlfriend back, and be a better son, he learns that he must first get through the zombies that have taken over the city. Now, if you're familiar with British comedy, and if you're familiar with British comedy, you're probably familiar with most of these movies we're talking about, but if you know British comedy, you're probably going to know Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, who wrote and starred in this movie. Once again, this movie is, well, it's pretty much everything you would expect from a zombie movie, but with, well, the comedy of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost mixed in. It's two slackers. One of them decides to get his life together, the other one just kind of decides to go along with him. As they do so, they learn that the city's overrun with zombies, and basically from there, hilarity and gore ensue. Now, if you're not familiar with Simon Pegg or Nick Frost, you would really be doing yourself a service to go watch this movie. This movie started off a series of movies starring both of them, and really, all of them are great. Last one on this list comes from 1975, and that is the Rocky Horror Picture Show. When a newly engaged couple's car breaks down in the rain, they find themselves at the castle of Dr. Frankenfurter. But instead of finding a phone to call for help, they find a bizarre party unlike anything they've ever seen. Now this one, I guess I could hear some people argue against it being British, that it could be American, because a lot of the cast is American, but according to IMDb, it's a British movie. Now it started off as a musical play, and that was popular, so they decided to turn it into a musical movie. So the reason this is on the list, it's not really horror. It's more, I guess it could be sci-fi / horror. It's, the two are generally interchangeable a lot of times, but when it comes down to it, it's a musical, and that might throw some people off. But this is a movie that has gained a cult following almost unlike anything we've ever seen. People will dress up as the characters in the movie and go stand in line for like a midnight showing of this, and then once they get inside, they will act out the parts in the audience, and it is probably one of the coolest things to ever see. And to be honest, this really made the list because I grew up watching this movie, if that tells you anything about the way that I turned out. And I've always really enjoyed this movie, and this was like my first introduction to Tim Curry. Really, you can't go wrong with a Tim Curry movie. Aside from Tim Curry, you've also got Meatloaf, Susan Sarandon, and Barry Bostwick, who after this didn't really do a whole lot until Spin City, I think. Either way, this is one of those movies that I'm not really sure if the first time you watch it, you should watch it with a group of friends, or you should watch it by yourself. I mean, it's really up to you, but either way, you should probably watch it, really if for nothing else than just to get the references that everybody else is making. So now I'd like to give out an honorable mention. Now, I don't know if I'm going to do this in all of the lists, but I'm definitely doing one here, and the reason for that is to kind of pay homage to the late, great Christopher Lee, who we lost not too long ago. So this month's honorable mention is all of the Hammer Dracula movies. If you're unfamiliar with Hammer, Hammer was basically a movie house in England in the, I guess, 60s and 70s and 80s, and they were known for putting out a lot of horror movies very quickly and on a budget. And they made like 6 Dracula movies starring Christopher Lee, and all of them were, well, they were great. Partially because Hammer was a good movie house, but almost completely because Christopher Lee was such an amazing actor and was completely dedicated to his craft. And it really shines through in all of the movies he was in, but the Hammer Dracula movies were really good. So, in order, the Hammer Dracula movies are Horror of Dracula, which is your basic Dracula story. Then Dracula, Prince of Darkness, where Dracula comes back to prey on 4 tourists who invade his castle. Dracula has risen from the grave. Dracula's castle is exorcised, so he returns for revenge. Taste the Blood of Dracula, where 3 men kill one of Dracula's servants. He takes revenge, ensuring that each is killed by their own children. Scars of Dracula, searching for his brother, a man stumbles upon Dracula's castle. Dracula things happen after that. Dracula AD 1972. In 1972, Dracula goes after the descendants of Van Helsing. Satanic Rites of Dracula. In 1974, Dracula comes back to take London. Now, if you haven't seen any of those movies, I promise you they are all well worth the watch, and I'll probably go into detail in another video later on. I'm definitely going to cover them at some point in time, maybe individually, maybe as a set, I don't know. So that's it for the first episode of 12 Months of Foreign Horror, or 12 Mo-Fo Ho. That's really not working, is it? Screw it. Still gonna hashtag it. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, share it to your friends. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. More videos will definitely be on the way. If you want to see anything from this list discussed in greater detail, like in the videos I've done before, then let me know which ones, and I will go ahead and add them to my list if they're not already there. In order to do that, you can type below in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter or Facebook, both at The Horroritis, or you can get me at my website, which is horroritis.info. So until next time, thanks for watching. I'm Dustin, and this was Horroritis.